Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a very interesting story for you. All right, we're going to continue covering the Michigan saga.
And now for the next 30 minutes, as the world turns.
And it looks like Jim Harbaugh has had a $100 million contract pulled. And we're going to talk about how badly Ohio State got cheated the last 2 years because of this. It's ridiculous. And then we're going to talk about hot seat buddies, which is Jim Harbaugh and our buddy Shane Beamer, who I have suspicions might have been sent a little bit of information. I can't prove it, but I'm going to get a little bit more into that. Got a little bit more circumstantial evidence, you might say. So let's get into Jim Harbaugh and all his issues. We're going to start with a article that originated from the Wall Street Journal, which is Michigan football rescinded a new contract offer from Jim Harbaugh. And this is on Yahoo Sports by Isaiah Hole. Of course, it talks about how Michigan's embroiled in this huge scandal, that Wolverines deployed in-person scouting and sign-stealing operation. And we've talked about that, where they actually sent people to these games, put them on the 45-yard line, and they recorded them with their smartphones. They would bring it back. I guess they would upload it to the cloud or somehow to Michigan's computer system. And then the coaches, I guess, would dissect it and figure out which signals go with which play, which they must have been really, really good at it. And this Connor Stallion guy was obviously the ringleader of this, and had a bunch of guys working for him doing this stuff. So it really got completely out of hand. And it's funny, I told you the other day, TCU got wind of it right before the college football playoff, and they duped them and actually reversed some of the plays, or many of them, and it worked out great for them. And they wound up winning a game they were probably going to get whooped in, and because Michigan's got way more talent than they do. But guess what? When the signs are reversed, all of a sudden Michigan can't win anymore like they were doing. So it's a big deal. When you steal somebody's signs, it changes the game dramatically. It changes everything. Just imagine the benefit of knowing whether a team's going to throw or run. For the defense, that's huge. And if you know what coverages the defense is in, you can alter your plays on offense to get into the perfect play for that defense. So it's a huge issue. Ask those Houston Astros if that worked out for them, knowing if a fastball or a curveball was coming. But let's get into the $100 million contract. It says the University of Michigan has rescinded a new contract offer for head coach Jim Harbaugh in the wake of the sign-stealing scandal that has rocked one of the favorites to play for the college football championship, according to a person familiar with the matter. The move is the first sign that the school may be hesitant about its future relationship with the famed coach who revived its football program. Yeah, he revived it all right. And, of course, he's been a candidate to go to the NFL for quite a while. And he even had a pay cut during the pandemic because he wasn't winning. And then he was given a new contract once they got good again for some unknown reason. But they were going to make him the highest paid coach in the Big Ten, and then they pulled it once the sign-stealing allegation came out.
You know something? No soup for you! Come back 1 year!
Now, I think one of the things that slowed down this contract was Burgergate. If you'll remember, he got in trouble with the NCAA. He didn't tell them the truth about buying a couple of cheeseburgers for a couple of recruits, which I thought was no big deal.
Where's the beef? Where's the beef?
But the problem is when you start bringing in the NCAA, and we're going to get into the FBI, who has shown up all of a sudden. I told y'all the other day I'd been thinking a lot about this, and I'm going to go into the FBI for a minute. What in the world are they doing there? And then I got to thinking interstate commerce, computers, all that stuff. And you sit there and you think, if a coach knows, hey, we're stealing signs, and nobody else knows this, especially in Vegas, could I make some money off that? And you think, uh-oh, there was a coach fired there. Now, I don't know if this is why. I'm not sure, but I just got to thinking, why would the FBI be there? Unless there's some sort of gambling, and those sites are in different states. Is that an interstate issue that FBI can get involved in? Because you're talking about the feds here. So it may very well be that. That's the only thing I can think of that makes sense. So this thing may be way bigger than we think. I mean, it's no joke when the FBI shows up. The NCAA is one thing, but the feds are not to be messed with, period. I mean, it can get bad real quick. This might end up being one of the biggest scandals of our lifetime. That's what I think it's going to be. And I kind of alluded to that the other day in a video, but the more I think about this is going to be huge. There's no other reason for FBI to be there unless it's something really, really significant. So we'll see how this plays out, but this is bad. This is really bad. So now the $100 million contract's been pulled. So I think Jim Harbaugh is going to be done at the end of this year if he makes it to the end of the year. I don't know how college football can let him make it to the college football playoff. What if they win a national title after this? I mean, you're talking about brutal. And you've got the head of the Big Ten over there trying to decide what to do. He can actually do something on his own. He could go in there and call a vote with all the team's reps and discuss this. And they can even start doing things to Michigan to keep them out of the playoffs. So there is so much going on with this, and it is such a moving target. And Harbaugh's over there just doing his coaching thing for now. But, I mean, the cloud he's under is gigantic. And the only person that's been suspended is the Connor Stallions guy. Well, let me assure you, there's a lot more coming down the path on this one. Now let's talk about Ohio State. Has there been a team more cheated than Ohio State in this whole drama? And I'm going to show you exactly why I think that. Let's take a look at Ohio State versus Michigan. All right, the last 8 times they played, and that goes all the way to 2011 to 2012, all the way up until 2021. Okay, 8 times they played. Ohio State won. 8 straight victories.
I'm sorry, winning. You starting to get the concept now? Oops, winning.
The last 2, 56-27, killed them. The game before that, 62-39. So they beat them by more than 3 scores twice, basically. Now think about that. Absolutely whooped them. Then suddenly, Connor Stallions and the sign stealing arrives, and all of a sudden, Michigan's beating them by 2 touchdowns. And 3 touchdowns. Now, how does that magically happen? Let's think about that. You lose 8 straight times, the last 2 by multiple touchdowns, absolutely get boat raced. Even at Michigan, 56-27. Then all of a sudden, you win in Ann Arbor by 2 touchdowns. Then you go to Columbus, Ohio, and beat them by 3 touchdowns? Come on. I just don't see that. Do you? They've had their number for 8 straight years, and suddenly Michigan's just whooping them? And then the sign stealing thing comes out. And Ohio State's over there going, you got to be kidding me.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious.
Do you know how many ramifications that had for Ohio State? I mean, it changes everything for them. They win that ball game or the other one, you know, they're in a very different spot. They're playing different in the college football playoff. I mean, it's huge. Ohio State's got to just be furious over this. And you know they got blood in their eyes over this. Good grief. Their main foe, the one that always is right there, their nemesis, their Newman, suddenly has got their signs, and they didn't know it, and they lose twice to them after beating them 8 straight times. They got to be just furious. So obviously Jim Harbaugh is on the hottest of hot seats, but we got another guy that's on a hot seat that might be connected to this in some way, and that is one Shane Beamer. And I covered this the other day. There is a possibility that Michigan helped out an opponent of a team that could have easily reached the college football playoff, which was Tennessee. Also might have helped against Clemson as well. 2 teams that were literally on the verge of going to the college football playoff last year. And suddenly they both lost to a South Carolina team that was not very good. They had just lost to Missouri and to Florida and got boat raced in both of them and couldn't score a point hardly. And then suddenly they're like unbelievable. They scored 9 straight touchdowns against Tennessee, and then they beat Clemson at Clemson, something they literally never do. So it's pretty interesting now that we've got some additional information on that as well. Not only do we know about the $25,000 fine that Shane Beamer received back in 2016 for receiving information about an opponent that he had no business receiving, and like I said, he got fined for it. So this is a guy that will take information on an opponent that he shouldn't be receiving. Let's also take into consideration that there is a connection to Jim Harbaugh that I wasn't aware of. And this is by Zach Reagan of A to Z Sports. South Carolina's defensive coordinator, Clayton White, worked under Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh at Stanford. So there's your connection. He worked for Jim Harbaugh at Stanford. And Jim Harbaugh had a good team there. So there's your big-time connection to South Carolina. So you've got a coach that's willing to take information based on his history. You've got a coach that worked for Jim Harbaugh. And then South Carolina, let's take a look at their schedule last year. Here they were. Missouri beat them 23-10 at home. They scored 10 points at home. Okay, then they beat Vanderbilt by 11 points. Vanderbilt. Okay, then they scored 6 points against Florida, 38-6. So their last 2 games against quality Power 5 teams, They scored 16 points total. Then suddenly, against Tennessee, they score 63 points, 9 straight touchdowns. Then they go to Clemson and score 31 points at Clemson and beat 2 top 10 teams.
Super easy, barely an inconvenience.
Number 5 and number 7 in the country, both on the verge of reaching the college football playoff. Now, they've got the same coach that they had last year. They got the same quality starting quarterback, right, in Spencer Rattler. What do you think the record is this year? Take a wild guess. 2-6. They beat 2 top 10 teams in a row towards the end of last year, at the very end. And suddenly now they're 2-6. You can't make this stuff up. Now, can I prove that this has happened, that they had the signs? Absolutely. I can't, but I can tell you this much, who can. If it happened, and that's an if, NCAA, it'll come out, especially with the FBI nosing around up there. Nobody's going to stay quiet with that. They get interviewed, they're going to squawk, and they're going to squawk hard. So this is going to come out one way or the other, and either South Carolina will be cleared or they won't. But there's so much circumstantial evidence around this, is crazy. The connection with a coach, $25,000 fine, a team that had just gotten boat raced by 2 quality clubs, couldn't score, scores 9 straight touchdowns, scores 31 at Clemson, against Clemson, and beats them, beats 2 top 10 teams, and now they're 2-6. So, I don't know. Oh, and one other thing. Let's not forget about those famous wristbands. If you'll remember, South Carolina, in the only game they used wristbands the entire season, or since, they had these special wristbands with plays on them for the Gamecock players to kind of have a little, I guess you'd call it a cheat sheet. You know, it's on their wrist. They can look at it real quick, and they get in signal the plays. So, very interesting. Now, if that worked for you last year, wouldn't you have done the same thing this year? I certainly would have. You're not going to undo something that worked the previous year against the same team, but somehow they didn't need them this year. Huh. Things that make you go, So there's that. So there's a lot of circumstantial evidence. It's not proof, but a lot of smoke. Let's just put it that way. Now, as far as Shane Beamer's concerned, he might survive this year because of beating those 2 top 10 teams. But you know, it's funny. Jim Harbaugh was on the verge of losing his job right before the sign stealing thing popped up. You know, because he couldn't beat Ohio State. You can't beat Ohio State at Michigan. You're not going to last.
He ain't lying.
Then suddenly he beats them 2 in a row. Shane Beamer's on the hot seat. He wins 2 top 10 teams. He's fine. A little bit of connection there too. So I just thought I'd cover this today. $100 million contract pulled. You got the hot seat buddies in Ohio State. Look, as mad as we are, if this turns out to be true, nobody's been cheated more than Ohio State. I mean, they have been, it's by their nemesis. So I promise you, they're furious. They couldn't be angrier if you went up and just slapped them in the face. They'd much rather you slap them in the face than to do this. So this is gonna get real ugly. It already has, and it's gonna get much uglier before it's all said and done. And whether or not these 2 coaches right here survive, I don't know. Look, Beamer may not survive at all just because he's 2-6. You know, if he winds up only with like 3 wins this year or 4, that's going to be tough. I mean, you're talking about being on the hot seat. He will be on the hottest of hot seats if he's not let go. And then you got old Jim Harbaugh. So I don't see Harbaugh lasting past this year if he lasts this year. He might get suspended before that. Michigan's not going to go down with the ship. They're just not. If they find the evidence, they will turn it over to the NCAA and they will suspend him. In my opinion, I don't see any way they don't. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover my Vols and then all the other stuff that's going on. It's NCAA stuff. If you've not subscribed, it's on your right, my left. Just hit that little button. It'll help you get my videos because I like to cover this kind of stuff. And right over here is the most recent video that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.